Hello and welcome once again to Crazy Comics and Stories. It's me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. And there's no one on the other end of the series of tubes and wires we call the internets except you. That's right, it's a special episode of Crazy Comics and Stories because Joe is still on the injured reserve. I do have episodes coming up, and matter of fact, next Sunday is the Festivus episode with Dangerous Dan Moore. I have a couple other episodes with Joe that are in waiting, but one of the things that I like that we do is we go through previews. Well, Joe's on the injured reserve, so he's not able to go through previews. Dan doesn't get previews, and really nobody who helps out on the show goes through previews. So you get me doing previews all by myself. I know, contain your excitement. I also went and saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, or as I call it, the Spider-Gwen movie. And if you have not seen this movie yet, I know it just came out on Friday, but if you have not seen this movie yet and you like Spider-Man in any capacity, you should go see this movie. This is a fantastic, fantastic movie. The art is amazing. It packs a ton of story into it because it has to introduce basically Ultimate Spider-Man. I don't know if it's really Ultimate Spider-Man. But it's Spider-Man, Miles Morales, a different version of Miles Morales than we're used to, but still a fantastic version of Miles Morales. You also get other Spider-Men, and just probably one of the best Spider-Man movies. Out of all the Spider-Man movies, I would rank this one just right, just a smidge below Spider-Man Homecoming. Very well done. If Sony does more of these animated films, I would be giddy as a schoolgirl. Just a fantastic movie, and not just because Spider-Gwen's in it, although Spider-Gwen's in it. And she has awesome hair. She's also one of the more well-rounded characters in the movie. She gets a lot of screen time, is used very well. But I love how it introduces us to Miles Morales. It introduces us to his powers, and it plays up something that even the comics, I think, don't play up very well. It plays up that he's mixed race, that he's African American and Hispanic, whereas in the comics they say it, but they don't really play it up all that much. So my quick review of Into the Spider-Verse is go see that bad boy. And pay money to see it on the big screen. Because that's what I did. I saw it on the ultra screen. Now, the other thing about me going to a movie, I've started going to the first matinee show on Sundays because I get off work at the group home, usually either 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. And then I go over. If I'm going to go see a movie, the theater is right next to a Walmart. I know. But I have to check and see if they have the new issues of the DC Comics that Walmart's got. Spoiler alert, they're not out yet. So it's a trip to Walmart that was a waste of time. Then again, I feel that most trips to Walmart are a waste of time. But then I go over to the theater. When you go to the earliest show, there are very few people there. And I like that. I don't like a big crowded theater anymore because people have their phones and they carry on conversations and they treat it like they're in their living room. And it's not one of my favorite things to do anymore. I'm becoming one of those guys who would rather see a movie at home on my big screen rather than go pay to see it on a big screen. Previews! Let's do previews. I have in my hand the DC previews, the Marvel previews, and the previews. Marvel, DC on their cover has the DC books for young readers. They've got 2 of those coming out. It's part of DC Zoom, which are self-contained graphic novels aimed at readers age 8 to 12, which means that there's some people who are going to be really mad about it. But I think these are fantastic ideas. They're $10 for 160 pages. The two are Mera, who is Aquaman's wife. Are they married in the current universe? I don't even know anymore. And then the other is Super Sons, which is Batman and Superman's kids, which 30 years ago was an imaginary story. Now it's the real thing. Am I buying these books? Probably not. Do I think they're a great idea? Yes. Like I say, next time you're at Target, go over to the young adult section and you will see the best-selling books there are comics. Captain Underpants, Dork Diaries, the ones by the ones aimed at girls. There is a huge market there, and DC and Marvel need to start tapping into that. Especially when you hear things like how Ms. Marvel has sold 500,000 comics through Scholastic. So that's trade paperbacks. But here we go. On to DC previews. There's first on the flip cover is Female Furies, and it says, from the pages of Mr. Miracle, Big Barda is back, and everybody involved in the book has said, yeah, this is not the spin-off of Mr. Miracle that was promised at the end of the Mr. Miracle series. So don't think that that's what's going to happen. A lot of the regular comics, I hate to say it, but I don't buy the DC regular comics anymore. I buy the trade paperbacks. I've gone completely trade paperback. So there wasn't a lot here that jumped out at me as being something that I am excited about for new series. I do not like that they put everything alphabetical rather than this is the DC books, these are the Vertigo books, these are the kid books, these are the creator-owned books. So let's flip on back to the trade paperbacks. So we've got Batman Arkham, Ra's al Ghul. I would be all over a good Ra's al Ghul book, but this one isn't a complete Ra's al Ghul. It's just random stories. And I think it would be better if they did what DC did in the late 80s when they put out a chronological Ra's al Ghul series that reprinted everything, and then they've put that in. They put that into a trade paperback, but it's been out of print for at least 2 decades. And I think that I would have bought this if it were chronological, or it's here's all the Neil Adams, Denny O'Neil stuff, or here's even all the Denny O'Neil stuff through the Bronze Age. As it is, it's a good sampler. It shows Ra's al Ghul through the years. The first omnibus I see that I am jumping on is Batman Brave and the Bold, the Bronze Age Omnibus, Volume 3. I have bought 1 and 2. I'm buying 3, mostly because it's a lot of Jim Aparo art, and Jim Aparo is one of my favorite Batman artists. And the Batman crossovers, a lot of them were by Bob Haney, so they just didn't fit with anything else. Bob Haney almost angrily ignored continuity. But these are good one-shot comics, and it shows that they have reprinted the entire series of Brave and the Bold when it was Batman team-ups in omnibus form. I think that's pretty interesting that they've sold well enough that, hey, this comic that we canceled due to poor sales back in the late 80s now is completely collected in high-dollar books. The next thing that I am picking up is the Detective Comics 80 Years of Batman Deluxe Edition. I picked up the Action Comics 80 Years of Superman. So I'm going to be picking up this 80 Years of Batman. They did a really good job on the Superman. drawing from all the different periods and explaining why Action Comics was so important. And with Detective Comics, I imagine they'll do the same thing. Let's see here. The next thing that jumps out at me is Grayson the Super Spy Omnibus. And the only reason I am interested in this, I missed it the first time because it was part of the New 52, but this is by Tom King. It was one of Tom King's earliest works. And now that Tom King is super hot, well, of course they're going to reprint it. And then on the other page is the Joker, the Bronze Age Omnibus. And what it is, it has all of the Joker stories from the Bronze Age up to Batman 400. It also has the Joker's comic, which lasted 9 issues, and the 10th issue, which was completed but never saw print other than in the canceled Comics Cavalcade, which we've talked about quite a number of times on this show. But it's a big old book of all the Joker stories, including the Neil Adams, when they rebooted the Joker character by Neil Adams, and then when they further rebooted the character with Steve Englehart and Marshall Rogers. This is something that I'm really excited about. Should be a big old fun book. Let's see, what else was jumping out at me here. I think that was it from DC. And that's it. There's $300 worth of stuff right there. Except I get it at DCB Service, so it's cheaper than that. And that's DC. Marvel has on the cover The Last X-Men. They are hyping the last 2 issues of Uncanny X-Men, which they've also announced the trade paperback of Uncanny X-Men will not have the last 2 issues of the 12-issue series. So I'm wondering if these 2 are pretty much just set up for this Age of X-Men thing. It's kind of weird that they're doing that without reprinting the last 2 issues. Another thing that they're soliciting is Marvel's Annotated. They are reprinting the Kurt Busiek, Alex Ross Marvels with a lot of back matter stuff in the comic before they collect it as a trade. And the reason they do that is to ameliorate the cost. I guess having it remastered and having a lot of extra matter, they have to pay for that. And the best way to pay for that is basically put out a regular comic that pays the cost of rescanning and reformatting and all of the extra matter. And then when the trade paperback comes out, you don't have as much on your books for that. We have Savage Sword of Conan #1. Sadly, it is not a black and white magazine. It is a regular size comic. I put on Facebook that I was sad that it was just a regular comic, and the colorist Richard, I can't pronounce that name, I'm sorry, Richard Eisenolf, who puts up a lot of his coloring work, kind of took exception to that. Dude, I'm not saying it's, just an average comic. I'm saying it's a regular comic size. And when I think Savage Sword of Conan, I think bigger, I think black and white, and the reason I think that is because it was kind of the prestige black and white book from Marvel. It was their black and white magazine that lasted the longest. It was also where a lot of the artists who worked on the book really knocked themselves out to do their best work, because they knew they wouldn't have coloring to cover it up. You had John Buscema, and they would have these beautiful Filipino artists inking his stuff. So that was just phenomenal. The art on this does look really good. Ron Garney is not a slouch, but I kind of wish that it was a black and white magazine, but that's okay. We've got 2 Conan comics now, and then there's going to be a Conan miniseries that they announced. Well, not a Conan miniseries, but a miniseries of Belit, the Queen of the Black Coast. So Marvel's going to be filling your newsstands with a lot of A lot of Conan. They're also pushing another of the big Avengers maxi series. This will be another weekly series by the same creative team, Al Ewing, Jim Zub, and Mark Waid. This one is called Avengers No Road Home, and I think it's kind of weird, and I mentioned it. I'll mention it on the next episode. God, recording these things out of order is just so strange. But this will carry on the legacy numbering of the Avengers. Whereas the Avengers comic, Daredevil's getting a reboot. And it's going to be by Chip Zdarsky and Marco Cecchilietto. I don't know. Chip Zdarsky did a great job on Spider-Man. He did a great job on Howard the Duck, so I'm looking forward to his work on Daredevil, especially since Daredevil's kind of become a comic where the people who work on it really go out of their way to try and do their best work. Ever since it was brought back through Marvel Knights in the late 90s, it's really become kind of a prestige book where the people who come on the book really try very hard to do their best work, to live up to the work of Frank Miller and Kevin Smith and Brian Michael Bendis and Ed Brubaker. And for the most part, other than Shadowlands, for the most part, people have done that. Another thing that I think is interesting is the Marvel 80 Years, where they're putting out some one-shots. We got Ziggy and Silly Seal, which was Marvel's funny animal book in the 40s. Gunhawks, which wasn't one of Marvel's big books, but it does talk about the legacy of their Westerns. One of the things that I think gets short shrift before the Marvel Universe started with Fantastic Four #1, yes, Marvel was putting out a lot of monster books, and there's a lot of love for those. But they also put out Westerns, and their Westerns were successful. They had Two Gun Kid and The Rawhide Kid, and before that they had Wyatt Earp, and they had a number of Western books. And they lasted a long time. So I like the fact that they're going to go back and kind of use the legacy of that. We've also got love romances. Marvel did have romance books. I'm wondering if they're going to do any like teen humor books, because those were the ones that Stan always signed his stuff. So you could tell in the 40s and 50s what Stan worked on. And he worked on the teen humor books, the kind of the Archie knockoffs, but also the ditzy blonde books, like Millie the Model and Patsy Walker and things like that. They were kind of humor, soap opera, romance things. Those were fun. They were fun books. They weren't aimed at us, but they had an audience, and Stan really loved them. I'm looking more decent. Great. We're bringing back the X-Men. Oh, now here's one of these weird continuities all changed and everything's odd series. Age of X-Man, which is a lot like Age of Apocalypse, where we're going to get, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4... Yeah, 4 mini-series that will be replacing all the X-Men books. I think that's a weird choice. You're just getting done with the Uncanny X-Men, which is another, let's make the X-Men exciting and relevant again. And now we're going to do these mini-series before starting a new one. Not really, I don't know. They know their marketing better than me, but I don't like the marketing of it. Because we got a Captain Marvel movie coming out. We got a bunch of True Believer Captain Marvel books. We got the first issue of Ms. Marvel. No, the one from the 70s. Where she was a feminist too. Her costume had a big old cutout for her belly button to show. We got a Marvel team-up. We got some early Captain Marvel where she appeared as Carol Danvers. We've got the X-Men where Chris Claremont grabbed her and changed her into binary. Never last. One thing I'm very happy about is they do not have Avengers 200. but they do have the Avengers Annual number 10, where Chris Claremont basically went in, cleaned that mess up, and said, yeah, that story was really wrong. It was just wrong. And he explained why it was wrong, and he did it in story form rather than anything else. And it was one of the first real early rebukes of a story that I remember reading, where you could tell on the page that the words Captain Marvel or Ms. Marvel, or just she was powerless Carol Danvers at the time was saying, was what the creator felt about the people who worked on issue 200 of the Avengers. And we have talked about that till we're blue in the face. I've said my piece on it. It was a terrible book, and I'm glad that they kind of got rid of it. For the other stuff at Marvel, there's, the regular books are coming out. I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to flip on back to the trade paperbacks and hardcovers. There were not as many this month that I was excited about. It does weird me out when I see the Marvel Masterworks. They're doing Spectacular Spider-Man Volume 2. Yeah, this has the Frank Miller stories from Spectacular Spider-Man, by the way. But yeah, I bought these off the stands, and now they're in a Masterworks. Hulk by Loeb and McGuinness. So this is the Hulk series that they did, including a lot of the Red Hulk stuff. It was the Hulk. Loeb's story, Jeff Loeb is one of those guys, and I've learned it over time, that if he's got a great artist, the stories are going to be fantastic. If he doesn't have a great artist, the stories are going to be kind of pedestrian. Ed McGuinness is one of the best artists working in comics. He brings almost a cartoony style to it with over-exaggeration and really like puffy figures. But I like it. It feels big. It feels exciting. I'm probably going to get this one. There's a book, The Marvel Art of Scotty Young, which of course I'm going to get because it's Scotty Young. We got other trade paperbacks catching us in on things. There's Uncanny X-Men, X-Men Disassembled, reprinting Uncanny X-Men issues 1 through 10, not 11 and 12. So I kind of wonder where they're going to be. It's a little confusing. Let's see, flip it on past. They got the Defenders trade paperback for the Defenders mini-series that I thought was leading into a Defenders series, but obviously I was wrong because I haven't seen any issues in a Defenders series. There's the Typhoid Mary, which says Typhoid Fever, X-Men, even though, let's see, it was in Spider-Man, it was in X-Men, it was in Iron Fist. Guess they know where their bread is buttered. Hey, look, it's a Sleepwalker trade paperback. Oh, it's the new Sleepwalker. So, there is not a whole lot in the, normally I'm jumping all over the omnibuses, but there's really not a lot in the omnibus realm this month. However, you get to the back, you get to the Epic collections. They are still putting out the Dark Horse stuff. This is, they're now up to 3 for the Old Republic, which if you bought those in the Dark Horse omnibuses, they were cheaper. This one is $40, whereas when Dark Horse put them in omnibuses, they were $25. So if there's a series that you like that Dark Horse is putting out that they might lose, like Halo or Buffy or something like that, the Dark Horse omnibuses are going to be cheaper than the other ones. This month's Decades trade paperback is the Spider-Man Meets the Marvel Universe. This is the 60s, so we've had the 40s, which is Human Torch versus Submariner, the 50s, which were the heroes coming back, which was really kind of a failed experiment. None of them lasted very long. I think I talked last time about how they brought them back, and most of them only lasted a few issues, but the Submariner lasted longer because Martin Goodman was actually looking to sell the Submariner as a TV series. And when that fell through, the book was canceled that month. It's okay, there's not going to be a Submariner TV series. Cancel the book, it's not selling. This is Spider-Man meets the Marvel Universe, so it's basically a lot of Spider-Man team-ups. Let's see here. Spider-Man's bid to join the Fantastic Four, the beginning of his friendship with the Human Torch and Daredevil, his first run-ins with the Hulk, the Avengers, the X-Men, and then it's one of my favorite Marvel stories of all time, which was, where is it? Amazing Spider-Man Annual, Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, drawn by Steve Ditko. And it's two characters you would not think would mix well. But because of Ditko's way of portraying the outsider character, it really worked, and I really, really liked it. For comic-wise, there is the epic collection of Iron Man. It's called Return of the Ghost. Really, it's a lot of the Bob Layton and David Michelinie second teaming. They did one in the early 80s, which is where we got the Demon in a Bottle story. And then at the end of the 80s, they came back and worked together again, this time without John Romita Jr. But Michelinie and Bob Layton really understood Iron Man, made him interesting. It's a very different character now because of the Robert Downey Jr. portrayal. But Iron Man was really kind of a generic hero with problems until they came in and really kind of gave him a personality and got into the corporate espionage stuff. And this is a great book if you've not read it. It also has some oddities, including Iron Man Crash, which was a computer-generated graphic novel by Mike Sands, who did the first computer graphic novel over at Dark Horse, at First. And those sold well enough that Marvel hired him to do a computer-generated Iron Man graphic novel. There was also a Batman computer-generated graphic novel at the time, and it's fun to go back and look at those and go, oh man, this is terrible. Shatter was the first one. And that was done over at First. And at the time, it was very much, oh, cool. Now when you go back and read it, it's like, wow, this is really ugly looking. I have not looked at Crash in probably a good 15 years. And within 2-3 years after it came out, it just wasn't anything to get excited about. But it's funny how computer art back then was the way it was done. And now, most comics, this will shock you, most comics artists are drawing them on their computers using a tablet. I don't think Brian Boland said he has not put pen to paper in decades. He said the last thing that he drew on paper was the Killing Joke. Let's see. We got another epic collection, which is Captain America, The Superior Stratagem, which reprints a big old chunk of the Mark Gruenwald Captain America. I know there are a lot of people who have a lot of love for that. I am not one of them. However, there was supposed to be a trade paperback of about a year or so ago that reprinted the Adventures of Captain America, which was it was a 4-issue miniseries set in the 40s by Fabian Nicieza and Kevin Maguire. And that trade paperback, I don't think it ever came out. They are reprinting that story in this. I am literally just buying this book for that. The Mark Gruenwald stuff, I'll read it. I won't hate it. But a lot of it is getting for that Adventures of Captain America miniseries. They're also doing a Wolverine Epic Collection, which is the second one. It reprints when Wolverine started. There were 10 issues by Claremont. And then Claremont left the book. Issue 17, Archie Goodwin started writing and John Byrne was drawing. And then after he did it, there were some other creators. This reprints the Wolverine 17 through 30. And then it reprints Wolverine, Nick Fury, The Scorpio Connection, which was God, it was written by Simonson and drawn by Chaykin, I think. And Wolverine the Jungle Adventure, which was drawn by Mike Mignola. So if you don't have those two, the art in them is amazing. You'll want to pick those up for the art. The Byrne art is okay. You've also got Gene Colan, John Buscema, Klaus Janson, Barry Kitson doing some art on Wolverine too. The art in these is really good. The stories are okay. You know, Archie Goodman did what he could with the Wolverine character. But the art, just so good. And Byrne was actually inked on this. Byrne was kind of just brought in for art. He wasn't working so much on the story. He had a really good inker on it, and I remember the art being quite excellent. There's also Fantastic Four Heroes Return Complete Collection. Well, you may want to wait on that because they're going to be doing a Heroes Reborn and a Heroes Return omnibus for the Fantastic Four. So this is the when the Fantastic Four came back from the Heroes Reborn universe. The first 3 issues are by Scott Lobdell, and then it's by Chris Claremont and Alan Davis. Do I really need to tell you any more? Yeah. There is also, I don't need this because I bought the omnibuses, but Marvel is reprinting all of the Iron Fist stories from the Deadly Hands of Kung Fu black and white magazine. So this is a little overpriced in my opinion because it's black and white, and it's only, 350 some pages for $40. But if you did not pick up those, omnibuses and you want those Iron Man stories, there you go. You got them there. Now, the big previews book. Yeah, I've gone for 30 minutes, and now we're just getting to previews. The thing is, like a lot of people, most of the stuff that I buy is going to be by Marvel and DC. I do buy other stuff, and as when Joe and I do this, I'm only going to highlight the stuff that's either I find interesting or I'm buying. Your mileage may vary. First thing that jumps out at me in Image, Mark Millar's books at Image, they're doing a Hit Girl Season 2 written by Kevin Smith. And all I could think is, boy, I sure hope they got all the scripts from him before they solicited this, because he's well known for having trouble getting his scripts in on time. But Kevin Smith, back writing comics again. It's been a while. The books from Dynamite that said that they were written by Kevin Smith, they actually were adapting scripts that he had written. You know, failed scripts for movies. So I think this is the first comic Kevin Smith has actually written as a comic in a long time. The other thing with Image that I want to point out, Mage the Hero Denied, number 15. This is an extra-size book. It will have an 8-page fold-out, because in the last issue of the previous 2 Mage miniseries, there's been a fold-out page for a very big dramatic event. This one has an 8-pager. And what a long, long trip it's been for this. I've talked previously, Mage is one of my favorite comics. I have a tattoo of the symbol that he has on his chest. I'm a huge fan of Matt Wagner, huge fan of Mage. The fact that he is finally wrapping up this trilogy is pretty exciting. I'm really interested in what Matt Wagner does after this, because one of the things he does on Facebook is he shows his technique. You know, here's the art once it's been inked, and then here's after his son does the coloring. After his son does the coloring, how it looks. And most of what he has done has been writing pulp characters, writing the Shadow, writing Green Hornet, things like that. So I'm really excited about where his career will go next. And I hope that while we haven't seen any work of his Grendel character or the Aerialist, I hope he does eventually go back to those characters. But really, just The art in this has been phenomenal. It really shows how much he's grown as an artist and the strengths of Matt Wagner's art. Um, Jumping over to Dark Horse. Dark Horse is, they put out a lot of stuff that isn't really for me, and that's okay. But they've got a few books out that I'm excited about. The first one is The Girl in the Bay by J.M. DeMatteis and Corin Howell. This is a one-shot. It's, no, wait, it's a mini-series. Looks like it's a mini-series. Or is it a series? It doesn't really say. But it's J.M. DeMatteis, and the art looks amazing. The premise is that in 1969, 17-year-old Kathy Sartoni was brutally attacked and her body hurled into Brooklyn's Sheepshead Bay. Miraculously, she survives and fights her way back to the surface, only to discover that 50 years have passed. And a strange doppelganger has lived out her life. I like it when J.M. DeMatteis does stuff like this. He recently announced that they're putting out a remastered version of Moon Shadow, which is one of the greatest graphic novels of all time. And when it comes out, I will direct you to that because it is phenomenal. It was published by Epic, and then it went over to Vertigo, and now it looks like it's going to be coming out from Dark Horse or some other smaller publisher. But Moon Shadow, one of the greatest comics of the 80s, and still relevant and still wonderful. So I'm looking forward to a new J.M. DeMatteis, and it's got a good hook. So there's that. Reprint Rise, they are reprinting, looks like the last, this is the last of the Two-Fisted Tales, Volume 4. This is Two-Fisted Tales after Kurtzman left and John Severin became editor. So it became a very different book. Kurtzman and Severin were very different in terms of editorial vision, but still very phenomenal. And when you read off the creator list, it's okay. Here we go. We got Jack Davis, who's writing in this. Reed Crandall, John Severin, and George Evans. Whew. Those EC books, man. If you've not picked up any of these EC archives, do yourself a favor. Doesn't matter which one. Just pick up any of them. Look in the bargain bin, look in the used bin, just to pick one up and see what EC was like. No other company came close. No other company came close. And the more time that passes, the more I can't believe how phenomenal these books were in their time. There were good comics back then, but EC was like head and shoulders above everybody. There is a reprint of the next in the Erie archives, which I am picking up. Boy, there's some good art in this. We got some Howard Chaykin art. We got some Jim Starlin art. We got some Esteban Morato art. We got some Wally Wood art. Story-wise, Archie Goodman wrote a few. So I guess we got that going for us, which is nice. Let's see. Looking through IDW, there's a book that I want to point out not to buy because there's a better version of it. There is a book coming out called Ditko's Monsters, Conga versus Gorgo. And what it is, it's a flip book with the Conga stories on one side and Gorgo stories on the other. It is $10 for 96 pages. Just go out to the Amazon or the eBay or an online retailer and pick up Gorgo and Conga, the complete runs. Ditko did those. They also put together by Craig Yo. This is like a good sampler, but still, 100 pages for $10 is too much. It's just too much. I like the Gorgo and Conga stories, even though they suffer from what I call Carltonitis, in that the art is, it's Ditko art from around the same time as Spider-Man. But man, they use that typeset lettering, and the reproduction is as good as it could be. It's far better than it was in the original comics, because the original comics were just crap. But I've got both of those books. They run about online. You can get them for about $20 each. Well worth the investment. Well worth the time if you're a Ditko fan. This is a good sampler, but again, yeah, the price is too much. It's too much. It's too much. With Boom and Dynamite, there really wasn't anything new that jumped out at me. I think we get, the new Buffy series starts. I'm sad to say I don't know anybody on the creative team. And it does not say that it is, it does not say that Joss Whedon is involved. There's another thing here. No, this is Buffy the Vampire Slayer #2. It also says the reimagining of Joss Whedon's groundbreaking series continues. Well, I suppose if Dark Horse did, 4 extra seasons, what else can you do? Firefly. I like that Firefly's getting a series. Greg Pak is a good writer. I'm going to be picking this one up as trades. 4th issue's in this. Looking to see if there was anything else that jumped out at me. And really there was not. And that's okay. Lumberjanes. I still pick up Lumberjanes. Still enjoy Lumberjanes. And then we get to the rest of the books, which always feels bad. One of the things that I liked in previews this month is they had a Titanic Tomes king-size collections. They have a whole list of big old books you can get with Jack Kirby. The omnibuses, the artist editions, the Marvel's king-size Kirby. The omnibus is available from DC. They're focusing on your big books this month, and they've got a really nice article on Kirby and a really nice list of the stuff that you can get that gives you a good look at his career. I have all of them except the artist editions because I can't afford the artist editions. The new issue of Cerebus is called Sim City: A Dave to Kill For. I always like pointing that out. I am flipping to the first comic that jumped out at me. I folded over the side. So at Archie, there's another 1,000-page book. These are basically just big, thick digests. They're $15. They're 1,000 pages. It's reprints of kind of random stuff. For a while, they were doing where they would kind of point out the more important classic stories, but it seems that that's fallen by the wayside, and it's just a great big collection of old Archie stories. I like these because, hey, it's 1,000 pages. It's digest size. I could throw it in my laptop bag. I will talk about that later in the show, but I always keep stuff like that in my laptop bag. They're just fun reads. They also have Archie 3000, which was a series that they did in the 90s, which is Archie and the Gang in the year 3000. Yeah, it was okay. It was nothing that I got excited about. And we had Archie 700, but we have not had an issue since, so Archie needs to kind of get on the ball here, kids. I also wanted to point out that there's a whole bunch of Classics Illustrated. And these are reprints of the original Classics Illustrated from the 40s, 50s, up into the mid-60s. And these are replica editions of those original comics. They are, what, $9.95 and $12.95 for the hardcovers. And I find it fascinating that the Classics Illustrated company still is in existence. I remember when I was a kid, these would be the comics that you could mail away for them. They kept them in print. And there was also, teachers hated them, to the point where I had never seen a Classics Illustrated on the stands. I think my grandparents had a couple. But teachers were like, and do not use the Classics Illustrated for your book report because they get things wrong and they change things. Really, they don't get things wrong and change things. They just, they've got to condense a 500-page book into 48 comic book pages or 32 comic book pages. So, yeah, it's not exactly, you're not going to get the full richness of a Charles Dickens story in a 32-page adaptation of a of that book. There is a company called Hermes Press, and Hermes Press is one of those companies where I would buy their stuff if their prices weren't so insane. Case in point, one of the books they have a spotlight on the best of Alex Toth and John Buscema's Roy Rogers comics. Alex Toth and John Buscema doing westerns in the 50s? Oh, I would be all over that if it wasn't 272 pages for $60. That's just, it's too much. Or Nukem, classic Cold War comics celebrating the end of the world. Craig Yo is doing collections like this too. They're basically grabbing a bunch of public domain stuff, putting it out, and a hardcover with 192 pages is $50. These are pretty much crap stories. You'd read them as a goof, kind of like the Craig Yo Reefer Madness, which actually has a Kirby story or two in it. But, you know, you're reading these as kind of a nostalgic goof. I'm not going to pay $50 for a hardcover that's, barely bigger than one of those Marvel trade paperbacks that reprints 5 or 6 issues. So, yeah, I'm not really... I wish I could buy their books, but their prices are just silly. Speaking of silly prices, I have talked in the past, there was a comic in the 80s called Aztec Ace. It was done by Doug Mensch and Dan Day, who was Gene Day's brother. Gene Day and Doug Mensch worked on Master of Kung Fu, and it was one of the high points of Master of Kung Fu. And Gene Day's art was improving every issue, getting more and more interesting, more and more well-rendered. He was very much a page designer, where the page itself would tell the story through the visual layout. Not just panel to panel, but the design of the actual page. And Dan Day got the visuals down. He was never as good as his brother Gene when it came to the page design. But Aztec Ace was about a time-traveling agent who went around in a pyramid and had the disembodied head of Sigmund Freud as one of his sidekicks. It lasted 15 issues. So, 544 pages, $70 for the hardcover. Sorry, kids. This should have been a trade paperback. I know that you probably had to restore the film because this is one of those comics that Eclipse had and then Todd McFarlane bought in the bankruptcy of Eclipse, even though Gene and Dan Day owned it. And I don't know if there was any legal wrangling involved, but they probably had to restore the film for it to be printed, computer scanning, etc., etc. I love this series, but I don't love it that much. It would be kind of a small omnibus, kind of like the, what's the omnibus that I got recently that I felt was way overpriced? Legion. The Legion omnibus for the X-Men character Legion, not the Legion of Superheroes, which I thought was way, way overpriced. I know that when I talk about omnibuses, people go, oh man, you're dropping a lot of money. Well, a lot of them I get on discount. You know, I'm paying 50% if it's a Marvel or a DC omnibus. Because this is a smaller publisher, you're only getting a 30% discount, and it just doesn't seem worth the cash to me. So, sorry. The next one that I want to point out that Titan Books has a Captain Marvel novel. They also have a Firefly novel and a novelization of Court of Owls. Titan also prints the hard case crime books, but they are not putting them in previews anymore, so I am pre-ordering those through Amazon. I love the hard case crime books. Hard case crime, they basically are like, we're going to do the type of crime novels that came out in the 50s and 60s, and we're going to reprint some of the lost gems of that era with a lot of the classic art writers like Lawrence Block or Michael Crichton, or Zelazny even did some of those crime novels back then. And they even reprinted Harlan Ellison's Spider Kiss, which was a crime novel he wrote based on his experience in street gangs in the 50s. I wish they had them in here because I'd order them, but then eventually I learned, I'd order them and then they'd be canceled a year later after they've already been available through Amazon or at the local bookstores, small bookstores, because when you go to Barnes & Noble, from what I hear, they just get 3 copies. Because when I ask, they get 3 copies. And then when they sell out, you ask, did you get blah, blah, blah? Well, we can order it. Well, yeah, so can I. Over under tomorrows, we've got, let's see, they're resoliciting some stuff, one of which I want to point out, the Quality Companion. Quality is a comic book company that most people don't really know much about anymore. They had superheroes in the 40s, and they had a killer lineup of superheroes. They had Uncle Sam, Phantom Lady, Black Condor, the Ray, the Human Bomb, Doll Man, Plastic Man, and the Blackhawks. And this is a book that goes over those series. I have not picked it up yet. I need to pick it up. That's why I wanted to point it out. But Plastic Man, when DC reprinted a bunch of those archives of Plastic Man, Jack Cole's Plastic Man, it's timeless other than, a few anachronisms here and there and, some racial insensitivity. But and I hate saying, well, if you get past the racism, but really, if you look past that, this is some fantastic cartooning, some great stories, and no one's ever really been able to capture the madness of Plastic Man like Jack Cole did. Jack Cole's art just made it bizarre and fun and wonderful. And this book goes into a lot of the detail on those series. There's also a Modern Masters John Byrne, which goes over John Byrne's career. I know a lot of the listeners are big fans of John Byrne. This is one of the better John Byrne books. Really goes into his career. There's not a lot out there with the biography of John Byrne anymore. Back in the 80s, John Byrne's biography was everywhere. But he's kind of dropped off the radar now that he's kind of hidden away on his message board and just talks to his hardcore fans. So there's not a lot out there of his peak anymore. So if you're looking for some John Byrne stuff, that's there. And then normally I don't talk about manga because I don't pick up a lot of it, but Urushi Yatsura is being reprinted, and a lot of you are going, what? This was marketed in the U.S. as Lum because it is beautiful space alien Princess Lum invades Earth on her UFO, and unlucky Oratu Moroboshi's world gets turned upside down. Will Lum become Earth's electrifying new leader, or will Atoro somehow miraculously save Earth from the space alien onslaught? This was kind of the first Rumiko Takahashi book that came to the U.S. I guess it was, if you were into anime in the 80s, you knew about Lum. It was like there was Lum and Dirty Pear. Those were the two that the hardcore fans knew about. And this is the first time the series is being reprinted in the Viz books that I can remember. They did a comic miniseries of it back in the early 90s, and I picked it up and I loved it, but it didn't sell well. Now, Takahashi's other books, Ranma 1/2, Inuyasha, and 1 Pound Gospel, all were huge successes. And Ranma 1/2 and Inuyasha were huge successes here in the U.S. There was a point in the late 90s and early 2000s where they were flying off the shelf. I love Takahashi's stuff. Yes, it's very formulaic, but the formula is very weird and very fun, and she plays with it very well. These are kind of science fiction, romance, humor books. I'm really looking forward to getting this one. And it looks like it's going to be in black and white, so they're not going to do any changes to it other than translating. And this one has got me excited. So that was really it that jumped out at me from previews. As always, if there's something in previews that you were excited about, go ahead and let us know. If you're excited about, wow, that's the worst transition ever. You know what I'm excited about, he said, trying to salvage the segment? These guys, our sponsors.
The Solitaire Rose Podcast Network has ads, and our ads are, first, for the best web host in the whole known universe, go to dreamhost.com. Dreamhost.com is the best, bar none, web host in the whole known universe, and we have been using it since 1999, so we're old. But also, if you need a web host, just head on over and use the code KRAYZ and get $20 off your first year. And when you're at work or you're at home, do you really want to eat those unhealthy snacks? Another bag of chips from the vending machine? No, you want to go over to graze.com and get healthy snacks sent to you automatically with a subscription, or you can order whatever snacks you like. Just go to graze.com. Your first and fifth box are free if you use the code CORYS3R5P. That's CORYS3R5P. Free snacks, healthy snacks, and the best way to keep away from the vending machine. If you would like to advertise on Crazy Comics and Stories or any of the other podcasts, you can just send an email to solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com, subject advertising. Thanks.
Yeah, trust me, I'm better on our other shows. You know, these. The Solitaire Rose Radio Network has all sorts of podcasts. We've got Scrabbling Across the West with Dave Cafell and his lovely bride Stephanie. They travel across the country playing musical gigs, and at night they sit down to play Scrabble and talk about their day at scrabbling.solitairerose.com. There's Novelcast over at novels.solitairerose.com, where I take the novels that I've written and turn them into audio podcasts. Currently, we are doing a novel called Do the Job, which is a murder mystery set in the world of 1980s professional wrestling. Then, over at badadvice.solitairerose.com, me, Cory Strode, and Wolfie B. Bad, along with Dan Moore, give bad advice to people who send in questions. That's bad advice over at badadvice.solitairerose.com. The Solitaire Rose Radio Network is growing. Be there! You think NBC will get mad I used that? Now, Joe's not here, so we don't have a what's going on the eBays. I've been talking to Joe a couple of times a week. He says he's doing well. He's getting out and about, but he can't drive yet. So when he gets out and about, it's because his saintly wife, Chris, is taking him out. He's been watching a lot of TV. He will actually have a special guest appearance on the Festivus show. So you got that to look forward to. But Joe is healing up. Should be back sometime next month. And now, an abbreviated Freaking and Geeking, because it's just me. So what am I freaking on? There's not a lot I am freaking on comics-wise. I am really tired of the old man blah, 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 blah. Because now in the new previews, there's Old Man Star-Lord. And DC's got Old Lady Harley. It was interesting when Mark Miller did the Old Man Wolverine. And then they brought him into continuity. And then they're doing Old Man Hawkeye. And now we're going to get Old Man Star-Lord. And I imagine if it sells well enough, there's going to be Old Man Hulk, and Old Man this, and Old Man that. We already had Old Man Spider-Man. It was Spider-Man Reign. And, ooh, don't read that one. That one's creepy and terrible. But I'm tired of the old man. Um, I understand how fun it can be to play with the characters and get outside from under having to tie into everything, but that's your bread and butter, kids. That's your bread and butter. That's what I still, when I go to comic shops and I hear people talk, when they see these series that take place outside of regular continuity, you will hear fans say, "Oh, they don't count. They don't matter." So you've got that barrier where you have to go above and beyond to be an extra fantastic book for fans to pick it up. And when I'm looking at Old Man Star-Lord, it's like, I don't care enough about that character to read about what he's going to be like 50 years from now. I don't. Um, the other freaking I have is at the group home. Was in the car driving in for my Friday night sleep shift. It's okay. I'm going to drive in. I do a sleep shift. And then I wake up and I do meds and everything. And I leave at 10. And that's my Saturday. Leave at 10 in the morning. But on my way in, I got a call from the on-call person who said one of the staff who's doing the awake overnight did not show for their 9 o'clock. They have not been answering their phone. We think that they've abandoned the job. So is there a way that you could stay up? And I said, well, I've been up since 5:30 in the morning, and I am not ready to do a awake overnight shift. You know, if I have to do an awake overnight shift, I need to sleep a few hours before I do that, or by 2, 3 in the morning, I'm, just kind of, and I'm not good for anybody. So they said, well, what you can do, we'll get some, we'll have the other sleep staff, they can stay awake till about 1 in the morning, and then you do the rest of the shift. And I said, okay, I'll do it if I can leave at 6. Oh, I don't think we can do. And I said, if I am only going to be running on 2 to 3 hours of sleep, by 6 a.m., that's 24 hours with 2 hours of sleep. By 10 a.m., that's dangerous. I don't want to say this to them, but it's like, I am too old to be driving home after 28, 30 hours with 2 hours of sleep. So by the time I got there, they had found someone to come in at 6 a.m. Oh, good. But I was not ready to stay up. I laid down. I had a little trouble getting to sleep because I was, when you lay down, and all you're thinking about when you lay down is that you have to get up. I still remember when I was in my 20s and 30s, the whole, okay, I'm out. If I go home in 2 hours and I go right to sleep, I'll get 5 hours before work. And that'll be enough, right? That'll be enough, right? I don't do that anymore. And Friday I'd been really sleepy anyway because we had at the full-time job, at the office job, the Christmas lunch. And they had veggie lasagna because I couldn't eat any of the meat-based stuff. And I swear that they put tranquilizers in that veggie lasagna because all of us who ate it within an hour or so were like, we are so tired right now. Oh my God, we're so tired. So I got there and you got, about 2.5 hours of sleep. Got up. Thankfully, there wasn't a whole lot to do. I updated my laptop. I read some comics on my tablet. I had to help a couple clients to the bathroom. And then at 6 o'clock, okay, oh, thank God. I'm gathering up my stuff, taking it out to the car. And then they get a call. Cory, aren't you supposed to be over in Cottage 3 right now? No, I'm supposed to go home right now. That was my deal for staying awake. Oh, well, the schedule hasn't been updated. Call on call. Oh, okay, we'll call on call. I got out the door as fast as I could. So, because I did not want the on-call to say, oh, we weren't able to get that person that I said was going to. Nope, I was out the door and I was gone. I was down the road so that they couldn't stop me. But that means that Saturday, I came home and I just collapsed. And when I stay up that much, most of Saturday I was just kind of... And I didn't get much read in comics. I didn't get this podcast recorded. I was going to record this podcast, but now I'm doing it last minute on Sunday night because I'm a slacker. And then today, I went and saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Went to the early show, got out at 12:30. And then somebody who I'd been trying to buy the complete DVD set of Scrubs finally messaged and said, "Hey, I've got the day off. Do you want to come pick them up?" Sure. Now, why would I go do that? Because it's all 8 seasons. Ninth season doesn't exist. All 8 seasons for just $20. So from where I was to where they was, it was about a 40-minute drive. And then I went home and I'm going right by a half-price book and magazine, one that we did not go to on Black Friday. It's like, well, I better stop in and see what they have. And I start looking, and in their discount, in the last chance DVDs, which is basically this stuff hasn't sold in over 2 years, so we just want it out of here. They had some Criterion DVDs for $3 each. So it's like, okay, I guess I'm going to go through that. And then I went through their graphic novels, and they had some more of those PS Art books. They had Strange Suspense Stories from the 50s, which was a Carlton comic, and another, the hardcover of Planet Stories, which was kind of a science fiction comic from the 50s, which was okay. It sold really, really well at the time, but it's kind of okay. But still, $12.99 for hardcover that if you would have ordered it through previews would have been $60. Yeah, I'm all over that. But by the time I got home, it was like, I'd left to go to the movie at 9 a.m. and I'm dragging my ass home at 3:30. And it's still not completely recovered from being awake for the overnight. So I was like, okay, I've got to lay down for an hour. 2.5 hours later, the alarm is still, I guess I was tired. And now you get this special episode. So that's what I'm freaking on. Geeking! What am I geeking on? Well, first, I talked a little earlier. I am geeking on Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It was not the story that I thought it was. I thought that they were going to actually use the Spider-Verse story, but they did not. They used an original story. There's so many homages to the comics, including Kingpin, where they used actual recreations of how Bill Sienkiewicz drew him in the Daredevil graphic novel that Sienkiewicz and Frank Miller did in the late 80s. Oh, I was looking at that, and it's like, I don't know if they redrew those or they used the actual panels, but man, just so good. It was just so good. And yes, there is an after credit scene, and yes, it is worth it. I had a lot of time to watch TV last week because I didn't have a lot of sleep shifts at the group home. That will change because one of the persons who is snapping up all the sleep shifts has put in his notice for 2 days from now. So, yeah, I'm going to be sleeping at the group home again, which is why it's a good idea for me to update my laptop and everything. But I watched a lot of stuff. I got all caught up on Ring of Honor. Got caught up on WWE, and the last couple episodes of Raw have been just stinkers. But SmackDown's been really good. The wrestling itself has been really good. I finally watched the season of The X-Files, the last season of The X-Files, which has been sitting on my DVR forever. Watched a few noir movies, and I got the DVR down to under 70%, which has kind of been a goal for the past few months. And the reason that's exciting to me is because when I record football, those games take up 5, 6, 7% of the DVR. So you got 2 football games on there that you're going to start being cramped for space. And I like watching football this year. It's been a good year. Vikings are having a bad season, but football's been a lot of fun. I didn't watch it in the past because I didn't have time. I thought I would have time to watch it, but I am enjoying actually getting home from work and watching a football game from the weekend, because I don't read the sports and I don't get scores at anything. So to me, it's like watching it new, except it's only an hour and a half. So there's that. I have also been just going nuts on a couple of sites that are doing Black Friday sales. Amazon, I go to Bleeding Cool and Diamond to get the list of when Marvel and DC liquidate, and then I wait about 2 weeks and go to Amazon and eBay, and you can pick up that stuff for because when they liquidate it, they're selling it for either 10 cents on the dollar or 20 cents on the dollar. So you can pick up that stuff just dirt cheap. And I've been doing that. But also there's a website that I've been using more and more lately called cheapgraphicnovels.com. They're having a Black Friday sale where they are just clearing out their warehouse. And it's very easy to tell that what they did, they just went and, okay, we're organizing the warehouse. What do we have? Because there are a lot of these books, I will order it. And, I have my wish list. And I'll order it, and then when it shows up at my house, I want to clean out the wish list, and I would say a good 3/4 of the stuff no longer in stock. So I probably bought that last one that they put it out there for. But I have made 3 huge orders from these guys. The last one, they added a bunch of DC showcases and Marvel essentials, and they're selling them for like either $3.99 or $4.99 each. And wow, did I order a lot of those. Because they're you get an essential for the price of a regular comic. So, my living room is stacked with new books that sadly I did not have time to read over this weekend because of what I talked about in Freaking. But still, all sorts of stuff, including some just like the Thunder Agents. They had the Thunder Agents that IDW did. I was able to get both of those trade paperbacks. Some of the more obscure DC stuff that came out. One of my complaints about the Batman Rebirth books, I like the fact that they're reprinting them in these nice hardcover books that just reprints, all of the issues. Except when they do crossovers, they just reprint the Batman issues. But out at Cheap Graphic Novels, they had the hardcovers that reprinted the crossovers. And the prices on them are just stupid when DC does it. It's like, I'm not paying $24.99 for a hardcover book that reprints 4 comics. However, if I can find them for like $3.99, $4.99, yeah, I'm buying those. So I was able to get the Button, really nice with a lenticular cover, and Night of the Monster Men, which even the parts in Batman were not that great, and I hear the story's just not that great, but still, it's better than reading part 1 and part 7, and that you don't know what happens. Oh, here's a text piece that fills you in on what you need to know. No, that's not the same. It's not the same. But I probably next weekend is my quote weekend off, unquote. So I will probably be reading and sorting and boxing, and I actually bought a bunch of short boxes to be putting all this stuff in because the living room is starting to get big old stacks of books. And Richard, I have actually been successful in getting some Spider-Gwen commissions. So once I get those, I will be talking about them in the podcast. But one of the good things about the Spider-Man movie is that there are a lot of artists who are actually saying, Spider-Gwen, I just love drawing this character. I'm looking to do another drawing of her. So I'm able to tap the artist on the shoulder and say, hey, I'd like a Spider-Gwen commission. Or, hey, that Spider-Gwen drawing you put up online, I'll buy that. So I probably will not have an extensive a collection as Joel Thingvall's Wonder Woman, but I think, or Joe's 70s Supergirl. But I think I'm starting to put together a really nice collection of Spider-Gwen original art. And there we go, kids. There is your previews episode without Joe. You've listened to me just blather on at the mouth for over an hour. And I want to thank you for that. So, as we say every week, the comic we like the least, we still like better than the comic that you like the most. And since Joe's not here, hit my music!